To train a man for marriage, I would encourage you to begin from that man is 3 years old. Teach that young man how to not be selfish. Teach that young man how to treat girls in his life. We think that giving a man marriage counseling and premarital counseling 6 weeks before they get married is going to change that man's whole life of behavior. I'm sorry, that is not how it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining again. So we are about to get into, man, I'm excited about what we're about to get into. It's the marriage key book for marriages and to help you enrich your marriage. And I'm more excited because we have the author of authors, Mr. Arthur, with us. What we're gonna be doing in the next couple of segments and episodes, we're going to be diving deep into this marriage key book and expounding and discussing and trying to extract some good relevant conversations. Just right off the bat, how long ago have you written this book?
This book, I believe we wrote it in 2020. It was like in the midst of COVID.
Okay.
And so I had time on my hands and, I was encouraged to start.
Now, why did you choose the name Marriage Key? Like what was going? What frame of mind were you in when you chose that name?
The name The Marriage Key came about because of the word key.
Right.
It has to do with understanding that marriages are built on principles, and a key is a principle. So you use a key to work on a certain principle. You want to open a door, you have a key, the door is very easy to open. And so once you understand how to use that key, then you have access. And so The Marriage Key is a book written with the hope to give marriages and people in marriage and those that want to be married the access to have a healthy, loving relationship by giving keys and principles.
Yeah. And I could appreciate the analogy there of the key. Now you start out with some acknowledgments, which I appreciate very much. Your wife, you acknowledge your daughters, your editing team. In many people, why did you start by acknowledging those people in your lives at the beginning of your book, which I think was very great?
I have been, for lack of a better word, I have been blessed to have a beautiful family. I was blessed with a beautiful wife that was very patient with me. The truth is, I was not ready for marriage. And many of us are not ready. And our wives, they must be very patient to tolerate us. Because if you're not ready and you should be doing something and someone is there to help you to do it, but you don't know how, and you're not open because you believe you know how, then that person has to be very patient and wait on you and until you have come to yourself. And so I appreciate having my wife who has been patient and so understanding and allowed me to grow. And so I hope now that I'm a better person for her for it.
Yeah.
My daughters, I just want to say this quickly, that from birth and whenever they began speaking, I decided to teach them how to read. And I would teach them to read by pictures. So I would let them read one word for maybe a week or one word for the day. And they began to learn the word not by phonics, but by the picture, how the letters look together. And so my eldest daughter, she encouraged me and said, "Daddy, you need to write that book." And in 2020, when I was at home, I couldn't go into school because you were in lockdown and I had to teach online.
Right.
She said, "Let's do it now." And so she sat with me. I spoke into a recorder and she did the rest, and here we are.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I appreciate that. I asked because we started by saying that I do believe that this is a timely book for our generation. And so many people are speaking with a confidence and an authority, but when you check if you peel back the layers of their life, nothing in their life uh, uh, adds up or
Mm,
grants them the audacity to speak within this whole field, within this dimension and this
yeah.
context of like so I asked because I think it's great to know we read this book, as we contemplate it, it's not
Mhm.
merely just coming from somebody that's abstractly speaking or theoretically speaking from afar off, or
Yeah.
saying you should know how to drive when you don't even know how to drive yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It, I acknowledge two other gentlemen in the book. Um, of course, I have my spiritual mother, Sharon. She's my older sister. But these other two gentlemen, the example that they lived in front of me, it was like a
Mm,
starting point.
mm,
And they would speak to me and correct me and teach me, Charles, Mr. Charles, I call him Mr. Charles, but he would not only live the example, but he would correct me and, this is how you should operate, this is how you should behave. Even in marriage, he would give me advice, that sort of thing. And so a lot of what I've jumped from, you jump on a trampoline, what I've jumped from
mhm,
is
mhm, mhm.
it came from those foundational
Yeah.
teachings. And
Mhm,
now what I've been stumbling on in the manual,
mhm.
I kind of wish I had that from I started.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's again, man, this is rich because I think the what you talked about with your daughters and the picture and the learning by picture, and I how many more pictures of healthy marriages we need right now.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes the argument against marriage is because there are not many good examples.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I glad that you went there. Yeah. So yeah, I think we need more pictures, more models, more examples for marriages today. More light needs to be shed on successful marriages. Why aren't we hearing more about marriages that are making it, and why aren't we trying to
Yeah.
model, or you go on Windows and you copy and paste? Why aren't we trying to copy
Right.
and paste where everybody's just getting fed all the negative. Everybody's just getting fed all of the reasons not to get married, or why it didn't work out, or the ones that didn't work
Yeah.
out. But what about the ones that are, and how can we learn,
Pattern
and how
from it.
can how can we pattern from them, and what are you doing? Or and I found out even the ones that are having successful marriages, they'll tell you they've struggled, and every so often they struggle through some things.
Yeah.
And so but to get to the introduction of your book, I must say, you start out with a very, very captivating picture, a very captivating for me, one that, well, at least for our culture, and I think other cultures may be able to identify, um, that is home.
Wow.
Could you talk to us about can you talk to us about why you felt it important to start the introduction with such a very vivid picture of that is home?
That's a very good question. I think it is sort of
Mm-hmm.
a warning, especially to females.
Mm-hmm.
Why, why, why is it a warning? It's something very important to take a step back and look at.
Right.
You have to know who you are getting married to.
Mm.
And so just accepting someone because they're handsome or
Mm.
because you fell in love and you had intimacy before you got married and you decide no,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get married because of that. Those are very
Mm-hmm.
weak reasons to get married to someone.
Mm.
and you might be marrying someone that is horrible. And so in this book, you find someone that in this introduction, someone that is so horrible that he's not only violent towards his wife, but he's violent towards his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice, he's spending money on liquor,
Mm-hmm.
money that could be used in the home,
Mm-hmm.
and coming home drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say he has enough money that he can take care of his home and enjoy his liquor. But now he's coming home drunk and hitting on anything that moves.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lady has to be very careful in being able to know how to choose and pick a maid, how to pick a mate. Because if you don't make the right choice, you might suffer for it for a very long time. And it could even cost you your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was driving home about a day or two ago, and I saw the traffic backed up. So when I looked, I saw this I think they call it a backhoe, and I started wondering, what was this thing doing? Well, there was this dead horse on the side of the road, and a horse is so heavy that it is much easier to move it with a machine. And so this machine was removing the horse, and my wife she felt so horrible that, what happened to the horse, and to see this thing picking up the horse in its bucket.
Wow.
And I told my wife, imagine that's how you feel. And imagine in marriages and relationships where we see it in movies, but we hear it in real life.
Yeah.
Of people doing things to their kids that even a dead horse, you feel bad to see it happen to that horse. And we see people doing atrocious things to their kids, doing atrocious things to their wives, and their girlfriends. And so that is why this is there, to warn you. It all feels good when you are hee-hawing and in love and blind
Yeah.
to what is in front of you, mommy. This part of the book is a warning to you. Open your eyes. Don't get with a man because of emotion, because of looks and external realities only. Make sure that you're doing your homework.
I think in the captivating picture you mentioned that the lady ended up marrying someone like her father.
Yeah.
And I think again, coming back to this whole issue or principle of having a model,
Yeah.
is really also a call for me. It strikes me in the way that we need to be having more um uh virtuous, if I could use that word, male models in
Yeah.
society today to set a pattern and to show. Because, and I think again it's important for husbands and fathers to know that we have an important role to play, especially in the lives of daughters, both daughters and sons. But it struck me, and I do believe, when he came home, the fear that rippled through the home, it was one that many people can identify with growing up
Oh,
in
yeah.
our culture, that boy, Papa's home, get it together. And in between, we see, I've seen where, because that is home, is such an excitement and such a glee, and that's a sign of a healthy head, a healthy
Yeah.
husband, a healthy father. I do believe again, the marriage key can help to unlock those doors
Yes.
in our lives. So yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's very good what you're mentioning there. And the thing is, many times the father can get along with the child and not with
Mm-hmm.
the child's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And they think this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say this. You speak a lot, you have said it over and over, and I think it deserves some attention, that we need proper models,
Yeah.
proper role models for our daughters and for our sons. And I want to answer a question. I want to ask this question and then answer it. I have here, when do we train men for marriage?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And so I want to give an advice on when to train men for marriage. To train a man for marriage, I would encourage you to begin from that man is 3 years old, 2 years old. Teach that young man how to not be selfish. Teach that young man how to treat girls in his life. He has a sister and they catch in a fight and he hit his sister. How do we treat sisters? You're not going to treat your sister like that. I'm going to have to put you on timeout, and you brainwash that child. If I could use that word, you train that child the way that he should treat his wife. From he's a child. The manual tells us you train that child the way he should grow. And when he's old, he won't depart. We think that giving a man marriage counseling and premarital counseling 6 weeks before they get married is going to change that man's whole life of behavior. I'm sorry, that is not how it works. See? So to prepare that man for marriage, begin when he's 3 years old. 3 years old, 2 years old, when he has sense enough to hit his sister. Teach him to not be selfish. And so you look at situation where you have children in relationships. Man, a child should be in his school book. You have no business telling anybody you love them and you're a child and your mother is taking care of you. During that childhood stage, sir, that young man is in his biggest area of selfishness, thinking only about himself. While when you're in a marriage, it is the opposite. So how can a child who is selfish be in a relationship? That means that that child wants to please himself. He wants to appease his appetites and his sexual physical appetites. And that's it. There's no understanding of what it takes to have a proper relationship. There's no training. And so I just wanted to say that to have proper models, we can't begin when the tree is already a big, fat and nice and juicy trunk that cannot bend.
Yeah, you gotta cut it down.
That's the only way to change it. The time is to before that trunk becomes a proper trunk.
Yeah.
That
When
it's
it's still
moldable.
tender
Yes.
and pliable.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you said that, and it's really a call. It strikes me that way. And I want us, men who are watching this to know that, hey, or who are listening to this in the future to know that, we have a major impact and influence on the atmosphere of our home, and the climate is the word I would want to say, the climate of our home, so that's something to bear in your mind as a man. If you're seeing a constant reflection in your home, don't be afraid to ask yourself, what am I contributing to this climate, or how can I shift this climate in my own home? That is home. I know the book had it in a very realistic way, but in a way that was tough. But how can we have a new kind of that is home in our time?
That's
where wife and children are like, yeah, that is home. So and in their introduction, you went on to talk about the manual, and you referred to it as the manual and the Constitution. You said in this book going to be referring to the book of the highest principles. And you also made a very, very I think vital statement that I would want to pick a question on. You talked about you're not necessarily going to the manual or the Constitution, which is known as the Bible, for religious purposes, but to extract principles that apply to marriage. How important is this concept for this book, but also for marriage and life, that people do not see this book or the Bible, and as you were saying, manual or Constitution, as just something that's used for religious purposes, but how important is it for us to see it as a life manual and a life constitution?
That's a very healthy question, and I would like to look at it this way. I have a big problem with religion. And so the manual is not there for religion. The manual is there to help us to navigate life.
Right.
To help us to have the best life we can have.
Right.
And whether you believe in the manual or not, if you practice what is in it, even if you don't know what you're practicing, you will have success. So if you have a manual that is written for your device,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you want to fly a plane and there's a manual written for it,
Mm-hmm.
you will want to read the manual. You won't get in there and be pulling buttons and disconnecting things and without looking at the manual, because you're going to take yourself up there in the air and gravity is going to not be nice to you if you don't know what you're doing.
Right, 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 right.
And so you will read the manual. The manual is simply, a manual only exists when there's a product.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sense in having a manual without a product.
Mm-hmm.
And we are the product that this manual was written for. It's actually written for us.
Mm-hmm.
And marriage is something that the manual tells us exactly how it should function, how it should work, that it can have the best outcome and fulfill its best potential.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is no way around the manual.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if you don't know, so you don't know that the car should have gas in there.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't know that, but you see other people doing it, and so you go to the gas station and you fill it with gas, it will work. Not because you did not get it out of the manual does not mean that that is what the manual tells you to do. And so when it comes to marriages, people should follow the manual and they will get the best function from it.
Yeah, and again, I don't know, man. This see this theme of modeling again here. You talked about the fact that even if I didn't read the manual for the car and know I need to put gas in it, but I see you doing it, right? I see you putting gas in your car. I see you changing your oil. I see you doing things, and it's creating for a healthy
Yeah,
automobile.
yeah,
Again, and I like that you went there, because I think we are the ones who, well, your book, I believe, is making the bridge between the manual, the constitution, and life.
yeah,
And I appreciate that very, very much. It's taking something that seems kind of distant and abstract, but it's making it tangible and relevant. And all the more, and I do believe this book is very practical. Um, it's going to empower couples to be a model of principle that the manual reflects, and others will be like,
yes,
wait a minute, wait a minute. I see you doing this differently. I see you doing that differently, but I see it's working. I
right,
see it's working. And so, whenever you see a manual, there's always a maker. Wherever there's a constitution, it always reflects a creator. So there's things to
yeah,
think about. I love that you made sure to add there, not for religious purposes, but to know that this manual and this marriage key book is something that is relevant and applicable, practical for marriages and for life. So I think
right.
that's very important.
The manual is not to be used to hide your imperfections, to
Mm-hmm.
hide your lack,
Mm-hmm.
to cover up for your stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be used to try to impress people, to
Mm-hmm.
try to look like you are knowledgeable. That is not the purpose of the manual.
Mm-hmm.
A manual is there to be followed. It is there to be applied. You use it and you interpret what it's saying and you apply it.
Right.
And when
Right.
it comes to speaking about that, I like to see this book also as a manual for
Mm-hmm.
marriages.
Yes, you did say
And
that.
I don't like to hear people saying, "Oh, I read your book in an hour." So so you get this, you buy this cookbook and you take it home and you read it in an hour. So what? You know, you buy the cookbook, you have to buy ingredients, you have to exert energy and effort and cook. And you
Mm-hmm.
might only cook a meal at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you buy the cookbook and read it in an hour, then you're wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
And so I see the book also as a manual in its own light,
Yes,
that
yes.
you can take And you don't have to believe it. Try it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not telling you to do anything that will hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
Just try it.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, with a manual, I remember a manual's aim is to get you to know the how to,
Right.
for the best efficient use of the device, and the marriage key is a how to for you to get the best out of marriage
And
for
that
you and your spouse.
and that manual also helps you to be safe.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see, because if you approach it in the wrong way,
Mm-hmm.
it can actually damage you.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and like you made reference to the Constitution, there's a constitution in every country to protect citizens,
Yeah.
boundaries, and if this happens, then justice will be served. And so, I love it from that too, because I do believe it will help to create good boundaries. And
Yeah.
I think one of the last thing I'll say, and I'll probably go on to one more question.
Mhm.
Boundaries are seen a lot of times as restraint and kind of like fun sucking kind of thing. But
Yeah.
there's a bountifulness, if that's a thing. There's great bliss and bounty within boundaries. You look at creation, and every time the river goes beyond its boundaries, it almost always ends in destruction.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
when tsunamis and these things come, and huge tidal waves, and the sea goes beyond the boundary that it was created to be in, you show me where it really really resulted in prosperity immediately, if any at all. So creation again just shows us um boundaries are important, and I do believe the manual and this book will help to shape some of those for marriages as well. So yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because we don't consider the boundaries when we are playing games to be boring. We don't consider them to be a problem, to be in our way.
Mm-hmm.
We create the boundaries.
Yeah.
You can think about any game there are boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball
Must
has
be.
many boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Football has many boundaries. If they are not boundaries down to the way you have to dress, you might
Mm-hmm.
not be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we only say, but we're not saying that boundaries is a problem. We are saying we don't want to follow.
Yeah.
We don't care if it's good,
Yeah.
but it won't
Yeah.
satisfy us. That's what we're saying. Because
Yeah.
everywhere you go, there are boundaries. When you're
Mm-hmm.
driving, you get upset if somebody stop in front of you and not go on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
You get upset if somebody come on your side of the road at 90 miles an hour while you are driving.
Mm-hmm.
There are
Yep.
boundaries.
Your boundaries.
The whole world is boundary. If there's no boundary, the water will come in and drown all of us.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be
Has to
boundaries.
be boundaries, and that's what I love about the introduction, where you talked about it not just as a manual, but a constitution. A constitution. Right.
Yeah.
I think as I was also uh looking at the introduction, I have to go here, man. I thought it was heavy what you said in the premise, where you talked about the responsibility of the marriage, whether it succeeds or fails, lands on the man.
Yeah.
Um, and you said even if it's the wife's fault, it's still the man's responsibility. Could you explain to us a little more that principle there within that premise, especially in a time where we are hearing a strong advocacy from males for polygamy. We're hearing a strong push from males toward women, saying you can't have a high quality man because you are a 4 or a 5 based on criteria that they have set up. Yet um, these statements, which are weighty and
Mhm.
very bold, um, is very very countercultural to what we're hearing. That the responsibility of the marriage, whether it succeeds or fails, lands on the man. Um, can you talk to us about that, and can you also share? Is there any responsibility for the wife?
I love those questions. And when I say love, I'm not talking about the type of love a man should have for his wife.
Right.
I just simply mean I enjoy those questions. And I would like to start with the wife responsibility first.
Great.
A wife responsibility is to investigate a male before she becomes his wife. Before she gets into a relationship, a serious relationship with him, that is her biggest responsibility. You see? That, don't forget that. Investigate. And have a standard that you're checking his what you're investigating for. Make sure you have a standard. If you don't do that, you are opening up yourself for anything that comes. And so if you began your relationship on the fact that he's tall, then don't get upset and want to break it up when you find out that he's not only tall, but he likes to hit you with his tall hands. No, that is not right for him to do. But I'm saying you should check all these things. The same way you go to market and check a fruit before you bite.
Right.
And you squeeze it and you touch it to see if it's soft. You look at the color to see if it's spoiled. Whatever you do to buy a fruit, you should be even more picky and testy when you're choosing your meat. That is her biggest responsibility. The manual says that a woman, on a second note, that a woman should honor her husband. So that is your second responsibility.
Yeah.
Honor your husband.
Okay.
But I'm saying before he becomes your husband, inspect your potential husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the man, that man is the foundation of the relationship. The relationship will work if he's a good foundation. If he's a bad foundation, it will not work. If he cannot take weight, any building you put on him, he's going to crumble. A man should not be on top of the structure. He should be the foundation of the structure. He should be able to keep the structure going. You know, I hear men complain, oh, my wife did not support me and my wife did not support me. If your wife is not supporting you, that she is a mirror and there's something that she's mirroring. Because we'll get into that in other chapters, so I don't have to do that. But if she's not supporting you, something is up. And you, sir, are the foundation. So I'd like to close that by saying, I love cars. And if you're driving your car, and this car from the manufacturer has a defect, that the brake light blows, it get damaged, it goes through damage in a short period of time. It only lasts a month. And it goes out. That is not your fault, sir. Or mom, if you're driving your car, that is not your fault, but it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
When the police on the street see your taillight out and it can cause accident that people won't know that you're stopping, then that police is going to pull you up.
Yeah.
And you can't tell him, well, it's not my fault because, yeah, it's not your fault. We all agree on that. The car has a defect, but it is your responsibility, sir. And so that is the best way I can explain it in a marriage.
Yeah.
You know, the responsibility of the male.
Yes.
In it, it might not be your fault. Sometimes it's your fault, but it is not always your fault. But you need to understand you are the foundation.
Yeah.
What happens is on you. It might not be a country's fault that another country wants to take their gold, they want to come and fight against them. But it's that country's responsibility to protect its citizens. So yeah, that is the direction that I'm trying to come from in the book.
Yeah, I love the word foundation. I think it gives a clarity or a greater sense of understanding to the principles in that premise that you know the husbands are the foundation. And it's again to end off, it's very counter to the picture that you use for the introduction, because in that introduction, that man wasn't really the foundation. He seemed to be, on top. Everything
Yeah.
else needs to bow, crumble, and submit.
He
Versus
was more in
him,
the place of a thief coming in the
yeah,
house
right.
and hurting the people in the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's he not a father, not a husband.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
are thieves that are more nice than he was.
Yeah. And I think the principle and the premise resonates with me, because it's something in leadership just recently that I've found out to be true, and I've learned that as a leader, because you're a husband and a father, you are a leader in your own right.
Yeah.
Many things are not directly your fault, but it is your responsibility. You have a 5-year-old and he throws a rock and hits the neighbor's window and breaks it. That's not your fault. It's best believe it's your responsibility.
Thank
You
you.
got the
That's right.
job. You got the job. You got to go over there and apologize and pay for it, and make sure you give loving discipline to your son, or whatever you need to do. So it's
I like that you did that. What about a dog? Let's
uh-huh.
leave the son alone.
Mm-hmm.
Your dog broke the leash
Mm-hmm.
and went and bit someone
Mm-hmm.
or killed their dog or their
Mm-hmm.
cat.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault, but it's a responsibility, and again, it's rich because it is countercultural in a good way, but challenging, and really, really bringing to the forefront um what what a man should be to his family, and it's really calling and challenging, and it's a good challenge
Yeah.
for men to take a rightful place in this generation and this time. Now, I just want to say this book is available on Amazon. All right, it's available. I think the paperback, the hardback, and I do believe it's an audio version as well.
Yes.
And I do believe you have a narrated version also on YouTube, I believe,
Yes.
um, on
Yes.
YouTube. So we just want to make sure you guys could know where to find the material and to find the content. Listen, it's man, it's good stuff. All right. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for spending some time. This is just the introduction, you know what I mean? You go to those restaurants and just set a nice little appetizer there for you. Well, this is just the appetizer. All right, we even get into the first course. So
Yeah.
that's just telling you the magnitude of this man's mind. All right, I don't know how all of it fits into his head, but it does. It works out. But until next time, we're gonna get back and unpack chapter 1 of the marriage key and go and cop that. It's gonna be good for you in a marriage. All right. Until next time, blessings on you.
Blessings.